Hi. This message is a reminder for those of us with big hearts during challenging times. I know that for me, Ukraine has been on my mind quite a bit the past 2 weeks, and it brings up a lot of feelings, thoughts, opinions, other scenarios that feel similar. And I know for those of you who are watching this, you tend to be the type of people that live with hearts wide open. And oftentimes, when that's the case, we have, or at least did at some point in time, have a lot of access to our emotions. And in our culture, it hasn't always been the most socially acceptable thing to do to fully feel what we feel. I think it's been confused with strength to not feel, or feeling has also been confused with throwing fits as children. And so we've been told not to cry. I don't believe that's healthy. I think that feelings are for feeling, and when we hold them in, they don't go away. They just sort of mutate into something different that becomes even more problematic down the road. So, number one here that I want to say is a reminder that it's okay to feel. And I think intuitively we know that to allow ourselves to fully process the emotions, the natural, normal emotions that we have during life is healthy for us. But we don't always know how. And so I want to give you a couple tips on that as well. And before I do that, I want to just say I've been procrastinating doing this video because I've been in a real funk myself emotionally, and I don't want to get that energy on other people. And but then I also recognize too, the world doesn't stop, right? I've still got work to do. We've still got things to do, even though we might be feeling things deeply, and that's okay. And it's okay to show up in all the ways that we are, even though sometimes we don't feel like it is, or other people have a hard time with it, etc. So anyway, what I believe to be true about feeling and emotions is that it takes strength to feel them and to be with them fully, to not numb them out and avoid them, or whatever other coping mechanisms we have developed around that. So anyway, I think it can really lead to a lot of resiliency to have a healthy relationship with your emotions. And so here's one way that you can be with that. What I've learned is, for one, to really allow it, like recognize when there are emotions under the surface that you need to connect with, and name it, name it for what it is. For example, one of the emotions that I'm feeling is grief for the people of Ukraine, and for all the suffering in the world, really. I will attach a link to an emotions chart as well underneath this video that I like and find helpful, because I think even, as we're not always as we don't always have the ability to, strength in being able to fully feel our emotions. I think we also don't always have a strong relationship to our ability to name emotions either. Sorry, that came out really awkwardly. I think that's what I meant to say. And so I find an emotions chart to be really helpful to actually be able to recognize and name the specific emotions that we are having. So I'll link that as well. So to allow it to recognize that you're in a certain place, you're feeling a certain way. Sometimes that comes out first as anger. Sometimes it comes out as impatience. Maybe it even comes out as jealousy at times, or different things like that. But to check in with yourself and see, is there something more tender underneath here that needs to be felt? And see what that might be. And it does take some sitting with yourself and being with that. Maybe a journal can be helpful, or a simple conversation with yourself or a conversation with God. Maybe you're just sitting in the car between appointments and, take a moment to check in with yourself. It doesn't have to be too long, and, you may cry. I think that, I don't know, personally, I think it's pretty healthy to let emotions flow like that. And I think more of us could use examples of seeing other people, like the emotional resilience of seeing other people be with their emotions and move through it. I think if more people cried, we'd be healthier in general as a nation, as a people. Anyway, I think I went on a few tangents there, but so allowing it, naming it, and then letting yourself feel it, and it's not always convenient and it's not always the right time, and that's fine. But to even just recognize, like, hey, I'm feeling grief. This is grief, and then know, like, okay, within the next 48 hours or so, it's probably going to be really healthy for me to sit with that grief for a little bit and allow myself to really feel it. Sometimes listening to music or watching a sad movie, can help you to connect with it, or calling a friend and letting them know right from the beginning, hey, can you hold space for me to cry? I literally did that yesterday. I texted a friend. I said, hey, do you have 30 minutes to just listen to me cry and just hold space? I don't need advice. I don't need you to fix anything. I just need to be witnessed. I need to be seen and heard and understood from someone who gets it and isn't going to judge me. So creating some space to sit with that, to allow yourself to feel it. And as you're feeling and moving through those emotions, to breathe. It's really simple, breathing deeply. These core bodily functions, breathing, crying, allowing, can be really therapeutic. And I think it can lead to healing as well, in many cases, and certainly creating that healthy relationship with yourself where you're willing to sit down and be with yourself in the midst of uncomfortable emotions can build trust within you too. And I know oftentimes you're holding a lot of space for other people too, right? And so to hold space for yourself it's only natural that you're going to need that, because you are likely holding a lot of energy and like, you're not only holding your stuff, your feelings, your experiences and emotions, but you're holding that of other people too. And so letting that move through you. Another tip on that, I wasn't intending to talk about this, but it's coming to mind, and so I'll share that, is exercise. What I find, the reason I'm not a big fan of exercise, but it feels great when I do it. And the thing that keeps me doing it consistently is that I know I, as a deep feeler, need to move the energy through me. I need to keep that energy flow going, because it can get really pent up and stagnant if I'm holding on to a lot and not releasing that in some way, letting that flow out. And so exercise can be great. And there's even been times where I started crying during exercise. For what that's worth, I think it's, has something to do with energy flow. The last thing I want to say around this topic of, having a big heart during challenging times is sometimes we think that there's like a guilt maybe that we are okay and other people aren't, or we feel that somehow we need to be there with them. Like it's not okay to enjoy life and be happy in the midst of suffering, but yet we sometimes feel powerless to do anything that really could make a difference. What I want to say about that is, to those of us who have a lot, who have privilege, who aren't suffering in big ways, I think we have a responsibility to live our best life. And when we do that, and when we're doing what is ours to do and what we feel called to do, in connection with ourselves, staying connected with ourselves, staying connected with God and our spirituality, and acting on those aligned impulses, there's a ripple effect. Maybe one day you have this random urge to go sit at a coffee shop or to go to a grocery store at a particular time. And, maybe you don't know why, and you go and you end up being in the perfect place at the perfect time to, for whatever reason. Maybe you run into somebody who needs it. And I'll give an example of this here in a second. But I think that's part of living your best life too, is following that, your intuition, and doing the things that are aligned for you, because there's an impact there. There can be, and to not dismiss the little bits that we can do, and the kindness that we can extend to other people. If there's one thing that connects us all as humans, it's that we all feel these same emotions. They may be different circumstances that bring it up, but we all know what it feels like to feel grief, and we all know what it feels like to feel joy, or to feel anger or sadness or frustration or fear. And again, we're not all in the same boat, and I don't want to make comparisons in that way, but we're not all experiencing the same thing, but we can have compassion because we know what that might feel like, at least to some extent. The story I want to share is the other day I had a lot of emotions built up. I used to cry a lot as a kid. And once I would cry, I'd go for hours. It was really inconvenient. And so I, at some point along the way, stopped crying. I somehow learned to completely turn it off. And so now that I am an adult and I really see the value in emotionally processing life, I have the opposite challenge where I need to find ways to let the tears out. Anyway, I felt them kind of building recently, and I had a full day out in public planned with my daughter. And so I grabbed my journal without a second thought. I'm like, anytime is as good of a time as now. And so we were taking her and her friend to a local trampoline park, and I knew I was going to have a while to just sit with myself and wait. And so I started journaling, and all of a sudden the monsoon came, right? So I'm in the middle of this trampoline park. There's felt like hundreds of people, and I'm just journaling and bawling. And I just didn't care, because I care way more about my emotional health than I do about what other people think of me at this point. Regardless, I'm kind of journaling things out, and then I asked myself, okay, what do I need? What do I need right now? And I said to myself, a hug. I need a big hug. And, I sat for a moment and I kind of, I looked up, and all of a sudden a friend of mine from middle school starts walking by, someone I have not seen in decades. And it just like the kindest, sweetest soul. And he looks at me and I look at him, and like in that moment of recognition, and he just comes over and gives me the biggest hug. And it was like one of those moments of pure synchronicity and, divine intervention. And he's like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Life, right? Just life." And somehow he just knew, like, I'm fine, right? I'm just feeling. And it was so beautiful. And so anyway, who knows? Maybe his intuition is like, you need to go to this trampoline park today with your kid, or maybe his intuition was like, oh, walk across the room right now. Who knows? And maybe you can be that for other people, and maybe you can allow other people to be that for you too. So I'm holding space for you now and during any of the times that you need it. Hoping that you're all doing all right, and sending you lots of love. Bye.